lounging, son.
All right, cool. So welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name's Ryan, and with me again, I have Joshua Williamson, one of my favorite writers in comic books. Last time we talked, you had just wrapped up Flash. You did the Speed special. There's a lot of shit that has come out since then, and that's why I wanted to chat with you. I'm glad that you said let's do it after Infinite Frontier because there's a lot to talk about that. Let's briefly talk about Future State. I want to start off with that, and then we'll kind of work our way forward from that. I love the initiative. I'll admit to you. And I covered every single week on my podcast. My buddy Dylan and we broke week what we liked. That was a lot of reading because I read every single book. He would skip some knowing that I would always read every issue. I loved your Justice League.
Thanks, man.
Fucking awesome. I loved the Red Hood. That was
right on.
Yeah. I am not familiar. Is it Giannis Milianis? Is that how you say it?
Giannis. As far as I know, it's Giannis. Every conversation I have is Giannis. He might tell me differently someday. But
I'm just going more based off of Giannis Antetokounmpo in basketball. That's why I.
Oh yeah, you might be right. I haven't really. I've never talked to him in person. We email and stuff, and we chat occasionally. But yeah, I've never talked to him in person. So I'm curious. His name has been said to me as Giannis.
Okay, I mean,
he might correct me.
That's what a lot of people tell me too. So, but yeah, that story was dope. But I just want to hear your thoughts on like how the initiative was for you, how much fun you had writing it. I mean, I loved that you threw Cobalt Blue in there. Not very many.
Oh yeah, I know we were gonna kill him, but
no, I mean whatever. It was still dope to see because I haven't seen that character in years. So
yeah, I wanted to try to like. I mean, this goes back to the Flash thing with Cobalt Blue, but it's like. I definitely always wanted to touch every little piece of Flash mythology in some way or form, like every little bit. Yeah. And that's part of why, I think we might have talked about this, but like Dr. Alchemy was a character I kept trying to use and it never worked. Every time I would get him into a storyline, he was supposed to be in so many stories and then they were like, this isn't working. You need to take out Dr. Alchemy. And they were always right. And it was always frustrating. That's why in the last issue, I just wrote that one scene of him knowing he was coming. So that's kind of the same thing with Cobalt Blue. It was like, if I could just write this character once, just one line of dialogue, I did it, right? In some of these cases, so I was with him. Future State, I will tell you this. Did you notice? Because there's one more Future State issue coming out at the end of the month. It's the
Superman versus Imperious Lex.
Yes. Okay. So all together, there's actually 52 issues of Future State. Like, I don't think anyone ever actually noticed that. There's actually 52 issues of Future State. Like, all together, it adds to 52. Okay. It was interesting. I actually wasn't really involved with it that much in the early stages. We had talked a lot about it. And when I was working on Death Metal, we were having a lot of conversations about what was coming with Justice League and, like, my thoughts on Justice League. And they know that, like, one day I want to write Justice League and do, like, a real run on Justice League. So we were talking about it a lot. And they eventually were like, hey, would you be interested in doing the Justice League Future State? And I think this was in like July or August. And so we started just going back and forth on some different ideas. And, it was like we built the team. We started talking about who we wanted to have in the team and kind of going back and forth. I wanted to write characters I had not really written before at all and really throw them in different dynamics. Because even with the villains, it was all people I had never written before. Like, I don't think I've ever written Tio Morrow or Professor Ivo before. And then I'm also really a big fan of, Grant's JLA. And his first arc is the Hyper Clan. The second arc has Tomorrow Woman, and Tomorrow Woman was built by Professor Ivo and Tio Morrow. So that's I was like, I'm taking all these pieces from those first, I think it's the first like 6 issues. And putting it into one thing. I think that Grant's run is so great. So it was like picking up all these pieces. And I had been asking about, it was funny, we originally had a completely different villain for those 2 issues. For years, I kept pushing them to let me use the Hyper Clan, to use the White Martians, but use them in the Hyper Clan form. And they wouldn't let me. I never could get it. I could never get it in there. It was always like a fight. So finally, when I had the opportunity to with this, they went for it. And what was funny is they were like, "Oh, no one's gonna know who the Hyper Clan. No one is gonna know who the Hyper Clan is." And then somebody, without telling me, they put the leader, Protex of the Hyper Clan. They put him on the Future State promo. And so the moment that was out there, somebody was like, "Oh, that's Protex. That means the Hyper Clan's coming." And I was like, "Son of a bitch, man. Like, I knew it. I knew this was gonna happen, but we still got to surprise people, and it was fun. My only regret is I wish we had 4 issues instead of 2.
Yes.
Like, once we started getting into it, dude. Oh man, let me tell you. Like, I think issue 1 works. I wish I had more pages for issue 1, but man, once we started on 2, it took me forever to write 2. I don't think I even finished writing 2, man. Might have been like early November or maybe October. I took forever on 2 because of that. I was just like, damn, dude, I'm shoving. It was wild. I was like, I should have had. What I should have done is I should have 4 issues, or at least 3, and had a whole issue of just them on that world, and then a whole issue. Like, even one more issue, I think would have got me what I wanted, because I had to like rush everything, you know.
Right.
And that was kind of a bummer. I didn't get to spend a lot of time with either the heroes or the villains once you get to issue 2. So that was kind of a bummer. But it was fun working on that project too. It's kind of crazy. And that's like such a distant memory, even that's only again, like I was still looking at lettering for it in end of December, I think, like January-ish, like beginning of January. But now it's like Future State is such that book in particular, because I'm not writing Justice League. I'm working with characters that are from some of that stuff, but it's like, and because I work on so much DC stuff and I kind of look at so many things at once, and I work with both editorial groups on a lot of things, Future State is still something that is like part of me, but it's weird, man. Like, my brain is so beyond. I'm writing the Future State Gotham book, which picks up at Hood pieces, so my brain is still over here, and dude, it's really interesting. Like, but it was a lot of fun working on that. I was really glad I did it, and I got to work with Robson Roca, who I have wanted to work with for years. He did issue 4. Is that right? Oh, he did issue 5 of Justice League versus Suicide Squad. And I actually have a page from that issue, because I just he did 5. I really liked working with him, and so I have a page from that issue. And he and I talked forever about trying to work together, and then so we had this opportunity to do a little bit of Justice League stuff. We ended up working on like 4 issues total. It was funny. Even when it was done, I was like asking them, it's like, can I get him for other stuff? Like, I have all these other projects, can I get him? And they were like, no, he's already promised this other thing. And,
damn.
But yeah, he's great. I think he's a really strong talent that has a really bright future and will do really cool stuff. I love working with him. That was a big part of working on that book, was knowing that he would be able to bring a lot of really cool stuff to it. But yeah, that book was fun, dude. It was super different. The whole initiative was different. It was kind of able to explore some stuff. I think there are places I probably could have pushed harder, but yeah, I don't know, man. It was fun. It was a fun experience. I learned some stuff working on it, and I'm glad I did. I'm glad people enjoyed it.
Yeah, man. I mean, I love the lineup. That's part one. I love the dynamic of the team. I love that there was that tease of like something happened in the past, so we can't fraternize. That was interesting too. Not hanging out outside of work, quote unquote.
Yeah, we had a lot of conversations about that. Go on.
So I really like that. I know that eventually, like, they all at the end, like they talk, they realize like, no, we can be close. I really want to see this team again in the future. I know that it's probably not necessarily will we see it, but I like the possibilities of Future State, of what we could
Me too. Yeah.
Out of it. And I think that's what I really enjoyed. Like, I was very skeptical. I'm like, this is like a 2-month like thing. Is a lot of people at the shop that I work here like, is it even going to matter? I said, well, does anything that you read matter? Really?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, if it's a good story, it's got good art, and you enjoyed it, then it matters. You know what I mean? Like, if you don't like it. But yeah, I think it was really cool. You guys knocked it out of the park overall.
Thanks, man.
Huge success.
Yeah, that was funny when we first started talking about it. I was still working on Death Metal at the same time with Scott and James. And at one point, one of the really early conversations, I was like, all right, if I'm doing this, at first it was part of it. We had a lot of arguments about it. Not arguments, conversations. I wrote one version of the first issue, and then I just totally threw it in the trash and started over. And a big part was I wanted a fun energy to it, and I wanted there to be a different kind of pacing to it. And I wanted to be different from the kind of Justice League that we had seen for many years, right? And I didn't want to just repeat what like Scott and James had just done on the book. And so I was like trying to figure out something different with it. And I remember really early on, dude, it was funny. Like, I had this conversation with them, with one of the editors at DC, like somebody high up who's not there anymore, but they were like, what if they're all like screw ups? What if it's a Justice League team full of screw ups and they just mess everything up all the time? And I was like, dude, come on. Like, we just have, are you telling me that we just had this, the death metal is ending, the Justice League saves the day, and then you bring a new team in and you're like, and here's the fuck ups. It's like, can we just not do that? Can I just have fun with it and say they're actually good at what they do? It's interesting. I don't know if this is a weird thing. I was just talking about this last night. Are you a fan of Parks and Rec, the show?
I've seen parts of it. I haven't seen all of it.
So the thing about Parks and Rec is interesting to me. In the very beginning, they were really trying to make Leslie Knope the main character. They were trying to make her like Michael Scott in The Office, where she's like a lovable fuck up.
Uh-huh.
And the first season is kind of like that, where it's like, oh, she's annoying, oh, she's abrasive, oh, she's, you know, a little too enthusiastic. And you can tell by the time they got to the second season, they were like, that's not working. And they evolved her character, and her character became somebody who is massively enthusiastic, but her main strength is that she's incredibly good at her job. She's incredibly passionate. She's great at everything she's doing. She's just super, super enthusiastic. And I was like, I want to do a book like that. Like, you know, like they're all so good at what they're doing. They're good as heroes. They have all these things, but the missing pieces is that they don't really have this social life with each other the way the other ones did, right? They don't go and have those meals, like what John talks about for a moment, where he's like, you know, Clark and Diana and Bruce used to have dinner together. And that's the part that's missing from the dynamic. And that's the part that's missing from being able to share that part of their lives with each other. And, you know, like when you're working with people and you work with people long enough, it's good to have a better understanding of them beyond work, right? Like, you know, it's just, I think it's healthy. You know, there's obviously boundaries you can set, but it's healthy to be able to have those kinds of conversations and that kind of, you know, that kind of I'm trying like morale among your group, I think, right? And be able to support each other differently than we're showing up, doing the job, and then we're leaving, right? And so that was where we put a lot of work into that, and that helped me shape a lot of it. And then hear the voices of the characters kind of coming from there, and that was the hardest part. Was that when I first started, when I got the job doing those two books, it was like July or August, and I took a really long time to write those two issues. Like, I mean, I was also working on Into the Flash. I think I had like pretty close to wrapping up Flash. I think I was looking at like PDFs, right? Like I think I had written it, but I was looking at like lettering drafts and stuff and making sure things went to print. And I was working on new stuff and pitches and getting things together. And that was one of the things that took so long to write those two issues, was because they were all so brand new and there weren't a lot of material. Like it took a while for me to get my hands on things. It was like getting my hands on the scripts for Batman or Superman or Wonder Woman or any of those scripts. It took some time to be able to like gather up all these pieces and read it all to start figuring stuff out. And, you know, because it just took some time. A lot of this stuff wasn't built in August. Like it was built, but it wasn't like I could sit down and read a comic of it, you know?
Right.
Like that's what I mean by that. I could read scripts, I could see things in process, but I couldn't, you know, like now, whenever I'm working on a book, you know, if it's a character that's been around for 80 years or whatever, I just go to the shelf, you know, and go to that scene, and there's a character that's going to be Infinite Frontier, and I realized I actually owned on the shelf every appearance they've ever had, and so I was like, I'm just gonna read them all right now. So I went through with a little, I'll get, you know, have like little post-it notes, and I'll write on why I'm posting it, and then I'll just go through and post all their stuff. And then I was like, all right, cool. Now I can read this person's, like, everything about them. Now I know who they are and get a pretty good grasp of who they are, but what actually has been revealed to the public versus what hasn't. But what's cool about some of these projects like Infinite Frontier or other stuff is that, like, I can either, if something isn't laid out with that character within the text, right? I can either text the editor that actually worked on it and be like, yo, what was really going on here, and get answers, right? Like there was something recently, I don't want to say who it was, but there was a character who play a role next year, and they wear a mask a lot, and I was like, what do they look like under that mask? Like, has anyone ever revealed what they look like? And so I was able to like text the editor, and they were like, yes, their face has been revealed once, and I have reference for it. And they were able to send me the reference. I'm like, okay, that's what they look like. That's important to know. Like stuff like that. It's fun. Or I can just contact the creator in some cases. I can just text them or email them or whatever I got to do and be like, what's the real story with this? Like, where was this going that didn't go, or what, like things like that. It's really interesting. But yeah, a lot of that stuff went into future state. It was cool seeing what other people were doing and other creators were working on and being creative and different, new voices and new people. And then moving on to Infinite Frontier, man, and doing the same thing, like digging in deep on some continuity, but
yeah, dude,
moving forward, taking stuff and moving it forward at the same time. It's been fun.
Yeah, I want to talk about Infinite Frontier.
Sure. Yeah.
I loved it, dude.
Thanks, man.
There's very few zero issues that hit for me where okay, overall that was really dope. Because there have been books like this before. My friend and I were talking about it this morning when we did our video review of Infinite Frontier.
Yeah.
That like Marvel Legacy years ago that came out, like it just didn't really, it didn't hit the same way that this did.
Which one was that? Was that 2 years ago?
No, that was the one with Avengers BC where we first.
Oh, that's right. That was the ending. Yeah, I got that one. Yeah. Yeah, I got that one.
So, like I liked it at the time, but not like this. Like, first of all, I love the Spectre.
Yeah, me too. I'm sorry. I'm sorry what happened.
Yeah, I mean, I just
shouldn't laugh. I love that character. We have plans for him. I mean, it's a Spectre, and that world. There's clues in there about what's really going on in the text, especially of Earth Omega, that you'll start to see these pieces as they come together. But
yeah. I mean, like I said, the framing sequence you did, how each story flowed seamlessly to the next without it feeling disjointed at all. I think it was just really cool. And I want to hear your thought, like,
yeah, man,
what you were doing with the framing sequence. I know this is leading to an Infinite Frontier series, and then also, I'll just tell you right like the other things so that you can just tell me all at once. But
yeah,
the Flash story, thank you for that, by the way.
Oh yeah, no problem. That was dude, it's funny because I mean, when I did Speed Metal, I was like, I'm out.
Yeah.
We had this conversation then. Because then I was like, I'm out. I'm done. And we had a conversation, I think in like October, November, about what we wanted to do. And we started outlining out what the special was going to be. And we were like, okay, each group is going to get this many pages. I mean, dude, it's wild. I have like in my office somewhere, I literally have my notebook. I wrote out like 1 through 64. Here's who's getting what pages, what those pages are going to be. Like, but I didn't get that specific. It was like, okay, these 3 pages, these are Green Lantern pages. These 2 pages, these are Teen Titans pages. These 3 pages, these are Justice League pages. Like, I went through and I literally wrote out everything out on a notebook, and I just sat there because once we had a phone call where we were like, all right, we had a bunch of phone calls, but really early on, all of us got on the call and we're like, this is the point of this. This is what we're trying to do. We want to make sure that it becomes a book about respecting and honoring what's been in the past, and all these things that we just said. We're saying it counts, right, from before. And then taking all those ideas and just moving forward. It's saying like, all this happened, we're drawing a line in the sand, and now it's all right, cool. Next chapter, right? Like, let's do the next chapter. Here's where we're going. And so we had a lot of conversation about that early on, but that was the message of it, right? Is that like the past is here, it's important, it has value, but it's time to sort of start this new chapter of the DCU, right? And it's time to start moving some of the stuff forward. We had this conversation early with the editors on the Flash about different ideas we could do and how we could move that character forward. One of the things I've been working on at DC for a while, like even when I was wrapping up Speed Metal, I knew the plan was for Wally to take over the mantle. Like that was already in the works. Even when I did Speed Metal, it was already like, okay, here's the thing that's happening. And we were like, well, where is that happening? And where is Barry going? And then one of the editors was like, well, actually, we think it'd be cool if he went to explore the multiverse. And I was like, yes, that's a great idea. This is why. I've been this whole thing. And I started seeing it. We brought that to the table. The editors, the Flash editors, and the group editors, we brought that to the table. We were like, okay, here's the deal. Barry's going this way, as we're going to do. We had sectioned off in the book pages for the bookends, the epilogue, but also pages to set up mysteries that we could kick down the field or things that we could do later on, right? So like Roy coming back from the dead, obviously is one of them. Yeah. Barry telling Wally, and that was part of it. So Barry telling Wally, like, I'm going to leave, you're going to be the Flash while I'm gone, I'm going to go be the Flash of the multiverse, and having those conversations. There's a couple others, but we sectioned all those pages off. And so then, yeah, dude, I sat here with a notebook and I just wrote out like 1 through 64 and just filled in everything. And then they went to the editor, or the editors then went to those creators and were like, you have this many pages, this is what we're doing, and go. And so there wasn't a lot of like hardcore, there were things we knew. So it's like Justice League is going to have them interacting with Shazam. We know that. So go, right? And it was like, some of them were really, go do whatever you're going to do. That's your book. But I'm glad that I structured it the way I did. I mean, it was so tight because that book has no ads in it. Has no ads. It is 1 through 64. It's that last page, and then you're done, right? There's nothing. Yeah. So it was tightly written. It was funny because somebody would be like, "Oh, can I have an extra page?" And I was like, "No, dude, no." Or somebody wanted to like flip a page or something. They're like, "Well, can we swap out with somebody else's room so that we can do this?" And I was like, "No, this thing is locked." Even once all the pages came in, Scott and James, like I sat there with a whiteboard when we had the whole thing. We had all of it except for the epilogue. We had everything. And I wrote out on a whiteboard, I was like, again, 1 through 64, just to make sure it worked, just to see what was going to go where, and being like, well, maybe we could move this here if this made sense. And then I would be like, nah, man, like that doesn't make any sense. Like the page turns, the splash pages, the 2-page spreads, like everything has to work in a certain order, going a certain direction. And then yeah, structuring it to be like it's flowing. And originally it was only going to be Wonder Woman. It was Wonder Woman and the Quintessence. We always knew that. It was funny. First it was Wonder Woman, then it was the Quintessence, then it was the Spectre, because I started thinking a lot about like how much I like the Spectre, and then I started thinking about Kingdom Come a lot, which you could argue is maybe the best Spectre story in a lot of ways, or at least the best story he's appeared in. You could argue that. I feel like you're a hardcore Spectre person. I'm sure you have your favorites, but we were able to essentially put him in the book to kind of be the person that she would talk to, and then it was interesting talking to some of the other writers. Philip Kennedy Johnson, he emailed me when I had the plot finished. I had the plot finished for the whole thing, like the structure of it, and he got to read all of it, but I hadn't written the dialogue yet. And he was like, who are you thinking of for the dialogue? What? And I was like, dude, read Kingdom Come. I mean, that's really what we're doing, right? It's that conversation that they have. That's sort of what we're going for. But yeah, dude, it was crazy trying to put that whole thing together. Like once we got it all together and then having to look at it as one piece. I remember at one point we had like a really raw version of it, and it was really interesting to see all these raw pieces, and then to sit down and be like, all right, cool, here's what we're gonna do, and then to make it just flow across the whole thing. And yeah, dude, it was a lot of fun. It was intense at times. Dude, yeah. So John Romita drew the last 3 pages, and he drew that last. So it's the last thing that we did. It was the last part. Oh, actually, it's not the last part that was drawn. I'm wrong. John Romita was moving. So this is part of it. He was moving to a new house. He had to draw these 3 pages. He draws these 3 pages, and I remember being like, all right, cool, looking at the schedule and looking at the calendar and like when it's going to print. And he draws these 3 pages, and then he has to mail them. He has to mail them to Klaus Janson so he can ink them. And I was like, oh my God, dude, like these pages better like express mail or something. Like you better overnight it, whatever you got to do to get these pages to him. Yeah. And so he got him, he inked them, and then we got him colored like all pretty quickly. The last thing that was actually drawn was laid out early, but drawn late was the 2-page spread with all the heroes on it. Like a lot of the heroes that were in the book or things we know are coming. I kept trying to add more people to it, and they were like, dude, stop. He's never going to finish. Because I was like, what about this character? We should put this character in there. Oh, man, we shouldn't leave this character out. And they were like, stop. You're going to kill John. Like, John, there's already like 40-something characters on there. And so they were like, you're gonna kill John, dude. Like, he can't keep drawing characters. So it was interesting, dude. It was fun working on it, and I'm really proud of it. And I'm really proud of all the creators we were able to work on with it, and be able to build something really cool and do something just different. And I say different, but it was like we're obviously doing something we've done before. Like we are trying to say like, here is a special that gives you a preview of what's to come in the DCU and lays out some of these things. And there's definitely like some of the math and the pieces that we've done in the past in there. But I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think we have a lot of conversations about like what has worked in the past can still work now, but you got to move forward with it. And that's really the message of the Spectre and one of them are talking about. It's like these things have happened. These characters they've gone through these things. They've all been on like a roller coaster ride. but now it's about starting a new chapter. But then Darkseid shows up, and Darkseid's whole thing is like, at the ending, he's like, well, here's the trick about starting a new chapter of your life. Eventually, you're gonna get to the end of that book.
Yeah.
Like, you can only start so many new chapters before you get to the end, and this story always ends with Darkseid. Like, that's how he feels. Always ends with me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's why he's like, I am the end. This is always gonna be me. And again, we were talking about Grant's JLA run, and it's like, you can see it's like I'm using HyperClan, and then Ivo and Tiomaro, and the Rock of Ages is so much, Darkseid. There's other stuff too. It's funny, like those first, I would say, yeah, Grant's run. I'm trying to think of the first 25 issues. There's all kinds of stuff in there that I've.
Yeah, there's a bunch of shit.
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff in there. I definitely used a lot of stuff that Grant did, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff we put into Infinite Frontier, and just trying to show people like, hey, let's just grab the stuff that we love, all these moving pieces, and just kind of hit the ground running in a different direction. And that's why you see stuff so quick. It's like, well, one thing was this, back in November, when we were really like in the heat of planning, and I had already broke up a lot of it, so I knew what I was doing, and I was writing the plot. It came together really quickly because we were, all these artists only doing 3 pages, except for people like Howard and, Jorge. Jorge finished his like so long ago. Dude, his was like the first. I say that, yeah, his was probably the first that was finished. Like, James wrote his so quick. I think James wrote his while I was still in the middle of like plotting the stuff out. Like, I had already had it, and so I could tell him, I'm like, you get this many pages. We were going back and forth. And he was like, can I have 6 and then 8? I was like, as long as it's 14. And then he gave me a script that had 16 pages, and I was like, James, no, this is how long it is. He had to cut 2 pages out of it. What was I going to tell you? There was something about all that stuff. But yeah, dude, it came together pretty quickly, being able to develop it all and just figure stuff out that we wanted to do, and all these like early conversations we were having. Oh, we were telling them, like, we don't want to have it be that we put things on the table that don't get answered for 2 years. That was part, right? It was like, we're going to put some things on the table, and then we're going to pick that shit up within a few months. Like, that's the goal. So it's like, if you're putting anything on the table, you better pick it up. Like, especially, and a lot of them did that. They were like, well, we're going to pick it up immediately in June, immediately in March. So it's like James had the A-Day stuff with Arkham getting attacked. So you're like, okay, Arkham gets attacked. That gets picked up in Batman same day. So we knew that. Then we knew there were little pieces of things that were going to get picked up later in June, and then stuff later on in July, and there's little things that will kind of build up through the year. And but for the most part, I think everything that's in there gets pretty picked up fairly quickly. Like, that was definitely part of our goal, was to be able to pick up some of these pieces as quick as we could down the line. Some of the Darkseid stuff is going to take some time to play out. Some of the stuff with the Quintessence. Flash, Barry, in his travels, he's actually the one that finds the crime scene with them all there. And then, like, what that means to him, what happens after he finds that crime scene. But yeah, we were able to put some of these pieces on the table. We could pick up pretty quick. Because again, I didn't want to be, don't get me wrong, the story we're telling here is definitely going to go on for at least a year in terms of like the big picture of things. But at the same time, it was like, I don't want to drag it out where it takes forever to get to every little thing. Right, it's like, get the ball rolling on some of this stuff as quickly as we can. I don't think there's anything in there that is, nothing that's in there. I'm gonna look at it now to make sure. Nothing is in here that is gonna be like, whatever happened to that. Like, you're gonna know what happened to all of this pretty quick.
Okay, so I have 2 questions. Yeah,
go ahead. Yeah.
So we got, first of all, we have the double page spread with Wonder Woman and Spectre walking through. We see the little snippets of like characters in those.
Oh yeah, I think everything in there. Hold on, I'm gonna look at it.
Okay.
Let me look at this. I think everything in there is within this year.
Okay, and then part Green Arrow. You wrote that.
Oh yeah, I wrote that. The Green Arrow Roy chapter.
Yes. I've been missing Green Arrow for a long time. You don't. If I have to delete this, because you can't spoil anything. I just want to know: are there plans for him besides Justice League?
Yeah. I mean, listen, this is what I tell everyone that asks these questions. We're in a really interesting spot right now in terms of DC editorial, because DC editorial has a lot of love for these characters. I remember there was this thing that Stephen Wacker said I was at Stephen Wacker was an editor at DC and Marvel and for a long time. He's a great mind in comics. And I was at this, it was a convention in Long Beach, like, I don't know, man, almost 20 years ago now that I think about it. It's pretty crazy. Maybe not long, maybe like 16 years ago. He had a panel workshop. It was a workshop that was going to be like how to work with editors. And I went and like nobody was there. And it was just Wacker. And so I got to ask him like a ton of questions. And there were a couple guests there that got to talk with him. He brought a couple creators. It was one of the most educational things I've ever experienced in trying to break into comics, was to be able to have that one-on-one with an editor. Because he was the original editor on 52. He was an editor. He was the editor on Spider-Man during Brand New Day. I mean, he's done a lot of stuff like that. Dude, he works for Disney and he works for Disney Marvel stuff on animation now. But he has a really good head for this stuff, and he's also like really funny and like no bullshit. And so he had this whole thing where he was like, we were talking about pitching and pitching characters. The reason why I'm getting this, pitching characters and being concerned about your characters and all this stuff. And he was like, every editor in comic has an encyclopedia too. They were like, they all have it too. They're all flipping through that thing. They're all looking up characters. They're all in the same headspace, and they all love these characters too. And they know and they have their favorites. There are editors at DC who, for every character you can think of, they're trying to figure it out. Like, there's at least one. You might get one editor that's like, I have no idea who that character is, or I have no idea what's going on with that character, or whatever. But then you're gonna get some editors who are like, that's my favorite character of all time, and I'm gonna figure it out. Yeah. And every character I think that's out there that people really enjoy or really like, that is the case. Like there is somebody in editorial or a creator or somebody who's pitching, talking, everything. Green Arrow, there are a lot of people talking about Green Arrow. Like a lot of people who love that character and they're talking about it. I mean, you can tell like Roy is brought back. He was brought back for a reason. Mm-hmm. They're both going to be in Justice League, Green Arrow and Black Canary. But there are plans for both Green Arrow and Black Canary throughout the year and other books. Like, I can't get too deep into that because, again, I don't want to get too deep into spoilers and things like that. Yeah. I think that there are other things that are going to happen this month, like in March, that you'll start seeing like, oh, there is a picture being built here. It's just going to take a minute. But that picture is being built. Again, you'll start to see as things start to coalesce where things are headed. That character. I love Green Arrow too, dude. I have like in my old office, that I had like 10 years ago, I had a whole shelf that was just Green Arrow toys. Just Green Arrow toys. I have a Darwin Cook drawing of Green Arrow that he did for me. It was a commission that I have here in my office. I love Green Arrow. I love the whole Arrow family. And, I feel like I've at least shown my track record that if I love a character, I love that family, I will try my best to get things where they need to be.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think after I read it, I told my buddy that, or I told him this morning, I was like, I really hope that it's Williamson that's writing Green Arrow. If not, I'll still be happy that if there's a Green Arrow, like stuff with Green Arrow. But
yeah.
What you did with Flash, I have faith in whatever you're gonna write next, because like I feel like
thanks, man.
You hit a lot of the things that I love about DC, and your love of DC comes out every time you write a book that comes out from DC. Every time you write a DC book, like I can see the love. I can see you doing callbacks without it feeling like it's a forced callback. I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be like, aha. I am trying to like put stuff in there that I know about and drop little lines of dialogue and little stuff that teases out things from the past or whatever, especially from pre-Flashpoint and even after Flashpoint. Like that's that whole line. It was actually, I probably shouldn't talk about this. All I'll say is that like I remember talking to an editor, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna have Ollie talk about the Q phones. He's gonna have the Q phone. That's how he knows that. Like that's the clue. It has to be somebody out there that has a Q phone. There can only be a handful of people." Mm-hmm. And they were just like, "Why are you talking about Q phones, dude?"
Yeah,
that's from New 52. That's from the beginning of New 52. But I was like, "Yo, it's there. Like the pieces are there. I'm gonna use them." But yeah, I mean, right now I had this conversation with Marie post Flash. It was like the week Flash came out. My last issue came out. We were talking about all the stuff that was on the table for me and all the things I was doing, and I was like, well, I know these two books. At the time I know I was going to do two books. One's been announced, which is Robin, and the other one hasn't been announced. Or actually, no, that's not true. I'm getting it all mixed up. No, Robin was, I knew I was doing Robin for sure. I had known about Robin for a while because that was like a passion project that I wanted to do for a long time. So I knew about that. I wanted to do a Robin book with Damien, and that explores his mythology and different Robins and stuff like that. And then I had another project that got greenlit the same week that has been announced. Yeah, for a long, it won't be announced for a long time. It's going to take forever to do. And we were like, well, we were talking about different projects, and a lot of stuff had already kind of been taken or were in motion in ways that I wasn't sure if I wanted to jump in, like on things that were already running. I wanted stuff that I could be there on the ground floor, and it was mine. And there were certain characters that I thought it would be okay to let, like, they were going to have happy endings, so let those characters kind of rest for a little bit. Right. Let them live in their happy ending for a while, and then bring them back when it's, you know, it means something. And she was like, I think the thing you need to do is do things that are unexpected. Like, do a couple things that are unexpected. I like doing stuff. I mean, obviously, I like doing stuff like Infinite Frontier. I like doing stuff with the events. I love working with the events and working with, like, the overall DCU picture. Right. And so we started talking about those things, and she was like, well, you should do things that are unexpected. And so I think that's what it's going to be like for at least this year. I think next year it'll be things that are a little more expected, but this year it'll be a lot of books that are kind of unexpected, kind of off to the side a little bit. Infinite Frontier is really a large project that becomes bigger as it goes. It gets much bigger. I mean, Infinite Frontier, I would say that this is like Act 1. Infinite Frontier, the 6 issues, is Act 2, and then there's an Act 3 later, and Act 3 is going to be huge. And so it's like, for me, working on all this stuff, it was like, well, then let me just work on things that I can have some fun with and play around with. But you'll start to see some of that stuff. I think that picture will start to become more and more clear. I don't know when because I'm working on 5 books.
Holy shit.
For DC.
Yeah. Damn, dude.
Well, there are some of them, I will say, let me think.
Only 3 of them have been announced, right?
3 of them have been announced, and only
Robin
3 of them.
Future State Gotham.
Yeah, Infinite Frontier. Yeah, only 3 of them are ongoing. The other 2 are minis, and so that's part of why it's that many, because I'm wrapping up one of the minis, and so it's like basically it's such a weird dynamic of shifting things around. Like, realistically, I should only be writing 3 books a month, because that gives me time for creator owned. But it's like, with this stuff, I mean, it's pretty intense all the time. But thankfully, it'll get to I think a smoother place within a month or 2, to where I'm only doing. Even though I was doing 4, it's gonna be weird. It's like I'm doing, basically, by the time we get around to the fall, I'll have realistically probably 2 ongoings on my plate, and then I'll be doing 2 minis at the same time. That stuff works. Like, that works for me, because minis are easy, because I say easy in quotations. you know your goal, and your goal is to have an ending to this thing. And obviously the ending is gonna, like, you know, you're locking that, you're closing that door, and the other door opens, kind of thing. That's how comics always are. I'm doing a lot. But you'll see, I think the picture's gonna, okay, here's what I'm gonna say though. It is going to surprise people, all this stuff I'm doing. I think some of those are gonna be obvious. You're gonna hear it and be like, oh, that makes sense. And then the other one, people are gonna be like, what? And they'll start to see that it kind of coalesces into something bigger, and then it's gonna be interesting. But yeah, Marie was like, you gotta do something that's unexpected for a little bit. Don't do the thing that's like the normal path. But, you know, and then also it's about what am I obsessed about? It's like, I always try to think about what characters at DC I'm gonna obsess over, and that's where Robin was. You know, Robin was a character I'd asked about a bunch of times, and I really wanted to write that book. And so eventually I was able to, you know, when the opportunity came, I was free. They were interested. I pitched an idea. They really liked it. And now it's like the easiest comic I've ever written. It's just a lot of fun. Every issue is just fun. And I've plotted out, you know, a lot of it already. And it's like, I know what happens at the end of issue 8. You know, it's like that kind of thing. Like, I've basically done page breaks. I've done almost page breaks for the first 8 issues for it, so I know where things are going. But that also allows me to kind of double back. I can be like, oh, okay, well, if I want this to happen, that means this has to happen here. So have to rearrange and stuff. I was doing a lot of that with Infinite Frontier this week with the 6-issue mini. like I was saying to you before we actually started, I have a whiteboard right here I had to take down. Otherwise, it would give away like 18 months worth of DC plans by accident. It's like the top part is all, the way I have it structured in this whiteboard that's right here, it's like the top part is all Infinite Frontier 1 through 6 and what that cast is doing. And then it's like who the villains are, who the cast is, what their motivations are, plus the plans. And it looks like, dude, it looks like gibberish. It really looks like a crazy, looks like a crazy mess. But then the bottom is like, and then here's what happens in the DCU for the next year and a half, this next 18 months. So that would be a whole thing. If you saw it, you'd be like, wait, what? Like it's pretty nutty. Yeah, it's like a whole thing. It's gonna be fun, dude. There's a lot of stuff coming that we're working on, and there's a lot of really fun stuff coming. I think people will be surprised. There's a lot of creators. There's a project I'm working on that's gonna have other writers involved, like other creative teams involved with Infinite Frontier stuff. We're starting next week, and I have to write. I'm writing emails to them right now, and it's just fun to have people like coming together and being like. And the thing about the writers that are coming onto this project, they all love comics, and they all have a history of like loving DC. Like I know them; they're all newer creators, but they all know DC really well, and so it's like, it's fun to kind of bring them in and be like, yo, like you like these characters too. What do you want to do? Or you're passionate at? Like, what are you obsessed with? And it'll be fun. I think you'll start to see. I mean, that's one thing about some of these books. There are a lot of books that I'm not writing, obviously, right, that are coming out. But I get opportunities to talk to those creators, just kind of spitball back and forth, And there was a creator who called me a few weeks ago who's working on a character. It was funny. He called to ask for advice, and I was like, "Oh, I love that character, so let's talk about it." And I was able to be like, "That's just." He already knew who that character was in a lot of ways, but I was able to throw in stuff that I think they didn't know. Like, oh, there's this villain that I really like that they use that hasn't been seen in a long time, and this is why that character's interesting. And then you are able to kind of bounce around with them a little bit about the different ideas and throw in a little bit of what works on that character, what hasn't worked, and just kind of throw ideas around with them, and then they can go and do that thing, and I get to talk to editorial. So like with Flash stuff, I'm not working on Flash, like Barry will be an Infinite Frontier, but able to talk with them about where my head is with stuff and what they're thinking and the direction they're going, and able to go back and forth. And like James and I, James Tynan and I, we talk every day. Like that dude and I, we talk a lot throughout the day. And so I know everything he's planning with Batman and Joker and the things that he has planned this year, and he knows everything I'm working on. We go back and forth a lot. And so even though there are some characters that I'm not working on, like I know what's going on with them, and I was joking about them. I was talking about this with one of the editors at DC back in December, and I was like, oh, I know I'm being a pain in the ass. And they were like, oh, no, you're not a pain in the ass. There's other creators that are a pain in the ass. You're not a pain in the ass. And I was like, no. But I have opinions about everything. So, and I'm not afraid to say, like, well, what about this? Like, and that's one of the things I really love. I like working I think one of the fun parts of working in comics is working in the room with other creators and, writers and artists and throwing ideas around. There's a scene in Robin number 3. The end of number 3. I couldn't crack it. I couldn't figure it out, and so I went to Gleb, who's drawing it, Gleb Malnikov, who's drawing Robin, and I was like, "Yo, here's what's happening. What do you think?" And he was like, "Oh, that doesn't work." And I was like, "Yeah, I know it's missing something. It's missing something, right? Like, because it's the thing with superhero books. You got to figure out what that character would do with that situation, but also what's like the cool, fun thing to happen in that situation. You got to balance it out. It was a moment where I was like, man, this is cool, but Damian would do it cooler. So how do we make that happen? And then he was like, and within a minute, he's like, oh, here's how we do it. I was like, oh, perfect. Yeah, boom, done. It's like, and I love doing that, but also in the room, I like pushing ideas and throwing things out there and challenging people, I think, in the room a little bit and being like, how does it end? That's the thing I always ask people, what's the last page? What's the last page? What's your ending? Like those two things, if you don't know those things, I get a little leery of that. There are creators I know who I'm friends with who are always like, I have no idea how it ends. I'm like, no, my brain can't do that. Like with Birthright, like I'm actually writing the last issue of Birthright in 2 weeks, but I've already written it. Like it's all up here, my notebook. Like I'll show you some, I'll flash it. Like I already know how it ends. Like I've already written it out. but I've known the last page of Birthright when I wrote issue 1. Like I knew what that last shot was. It's changed like 5%. Like there's one little element that changes because of just me figuring things out across the story. But it's like I always feel like you have to know the ending, and that's, you know, I think that's part of why the way Infinite Frontier ends with Darkseid being like, I am the end and all that stuff, because I'm obsessed with endings. Like I think endings are really interesting, and we don't get a lot of endings in comics.
Nope.
No, things go on forever, and so it's interesting to kind of mix things up a little bit and just have fun with it. You know, I mean, with Infinite Frontier, I'm glad we did it, and I'm glad that we were able to say like, here's this moment, and then just move forward. And I think all these books are going to surprise people. Like a lot of these books are different. There's different creative teams on them, people I haven't seen before. And just it's cool to kind of mix things up a little bit and kind of move on to this new era. You know, I think it's going to surprise people. I think they're going to think. It's funny. I saw some response to Infinite Frontier and even to Robin, and it's interesting seeing people kind of predict, and it's wrong a lot of places. Like it's fun to watch. Like we're trying to make things a little unpredictable, and I think it's going to surprise people as we go. So you can be like, oh, you know, they're like, oh, like these characters aren't going to show up ever again, and it's like, nope, just June, just wait a second, you know, or this will happen in July, and this will happen in August, and I think it's going to start moving in a way that people are going to be really surprised by. We're trying to make it feel a little less predictable, and I think that will get people going and be like, oh, I didn't see that coming. Like I love that stuff.
Same here, man. I mean, I think it's a really exciting time to be a DC fan. I love like seeing the, you know, fresh faces on comics, you know, creators I didn't know about, like Tim Sheridan, what he's doing with Teen Titans, I think is really dope. I do want to ask, without ruining anything about Robin, if you could just kind of like talk about what we could expect of the series. I know we got the part 1. We have a 2-part that was
Detective.
Detective. I mean, Damian's leaving Bruce behind. He's leaving Batman. He wants to rejoin League of Assassins.
Well, I think he's just trying to figure out where he fits in the world, man.
Okay.
You know, so he goes back to Mom, and she kind of calls that out, right? And
I loved it.
Just like she's like, "What are you talking about? You escaped. You're free. You came back to Mommy." They're like, "That's all right." She's like, "That's okay. You know, like you're a bird that tried to fly too soon, and I'm bringing you back to the nest. It's all right. It's gonna be okay." And you'll see that he eventually like figures out a little bit more of a path, and he gets kind of his own thing. He without outright saying it, he makes a choice, but that choice is complicated. And then you know, he wants to know more about the League of Lazarus and why they were kept secret from him. And so he goes to figure out more about them. That's what leads him to the tournament. He goes, does this like Mortal Kombat Street Fighter tournament that has all of these great fighters in it. You know, there's going to be some surprises in there, some characters people haven't seen for a while. There's going to be some characters that we all know and love, and they all get into this tournament on this island. So you have to be invited to the island. That's part of it. So all these characters have been invited to the island, and they go and they have a tournament to see who's the best fighter and who's willing to go the distance to join the League of Lazarus. You'll see it gets real. It's real fun, dude. It's wild. Like I'm having so much fun doing it, and Damian is going to leave all this stuff behind and kind of go on his own for a little bit and try to figure out who he is, and he goes on different kinds of journeys. You know, there's definitely a lot of physical stuff, like he's learning to be a better fighter and learning how to be who he wants to be and not just be Batman. But it's also a bit of like a spiritual journey for him, and trying to figure out like who he is after everything that's happened to him over the years. And trying to just find his own path. Like that's a big part of this, is trying to find his own path that isn't so dictated by these two lanes people always seem to put him in. And you know, having to deal with that with all these new characters we're introducing. And that book is interesting because it's like it has Ravager in it. So Ravager's in the book. There's a few new characters that are in it. There's a couple of mystery characters, and there's characters I haven't seen in a long time that I'm really excited about writing. That'll become pretty obvious pretty quickly. I think we have to show some of it next week. So there's a lot of fun pieces to that book that I think people will get really excited by. I don't know, dude. It's cool. Like I love writing that book. I got my little Robin. I have a Robin statue right here, and then I got the Robin McFarlane toy come in the mail next week. I just got the notification that was coming. So I love that character, dude. I've been trying to write him forever. So I'm glad I finally get to write him again. And it's easily it is easy like the easiest book I've ever written for DC, and it's like the most fun probably too. Like all your books are really hard; they can have their own levels of hard, and Damien has his own level of hard too. But at the end of the day, it's like I don't know, it's just fun. It's like always trying to find some really fun for him to do and pull on some heartstrings, but then also make you laugh at the same time. Like I don't know, it's gonna be a weird book, dude. I think it's just fun. It's just a fun book.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I loved the first part. I mean, I miss having a Robin book. I mean, while I really love Tim Drake, and I would like to see him.
Oh, me too.
Shine.
There's plans for Tim. I mean, there's. I was just looking at something yesterday. Like, there's definitely plans for Tim. I feel like you'll know. Here, look at my calendar. I think you'll have a pretty good idea of where. I mean, you're gonna know where Tim is based on reading some of the Batman books in general. But I think by May you'll know where Tim is.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, I'm like I said, this whole line of what you guys have kind of done, Future State leading into Infinite Frontier. I'm very stoked for. I'm stoked to see what you got coming up. All the books you got, even the ones that haven't been announced, I'm sure I'm gonna be excited.
Oh, dude, it's weird. I think people are gonna be surprised, but it's gonna be an interesting 2 years. That's what I'll say. I mean, I think it's gonna be an interesting 2 years of stuff going on, or at least 18 months of stuff going on. There'll be some surprises, and then some stuff will be. Oh yeah, 2 years, I guess. There'll be some surprises, and then some stuff will be obvious as they go, and there'll be some curveballs, dude. Definitely. I mean, you got to tell a story, right? Like you got to
yeah.
So, but I think the stuff I'm working on will surprise people in places.
Awesome. And can you tease anything without spoiling anything, and maybe even when we can at least expect announcements for some of the stuff?
I don't know. I think one of the announcements you're not going to start getting into like May or June. You'll start having an idea of some stuff, and then you're talking about stuff going into October. You know, I think like there's stuff that probably won't get announced till then, and then what can I tease? It's funny. Somebody asked me this on another podcast. Like, what can you tease? And I teased that, like, you know, Batman's Black Lantern ring from Death Metal is missing. Like, we don't know what happened to it. And so that's one piece. What is something else I can tease? I'm trying to think of the stuff here. Let me look at the wall. Let's see here. Oh, okay. I'll tell you this. There's a character. There is a villain, a Flash villain, a DC villain that has a history with Barry, and they haven't seen each other in a really long time. And that the idea they haven't seen each other a really long time will play an important part in next year or this year. God, yeah, this year. That's what I can tease you.
Okay.
Flash fans, dude, it's wild. I'm gonna say this. I figured something out about the Flash that I don't know how nobody thought of. And I was like, oh my God, is that right? And I had to like look it up, and I'm like, oh dang, dude, I like cracked the code on something that that I'm really excited about. Yeah.
I mean, I think you're the only one that could have done it. If I'm being honest.
I don't know, dude. There are people who I can't believe they never thought of this one thing, dude. It is wild. I'm still like trying to figure out if that's ever happened, but it's I couldn't believe that there's like a piece of DC history that's kind of like important, like an interesting thing involving the Flash that like has never come up again. And I figured it out, and I was like, oh, dude. Yes, this right here. This is cool. So yeah, it's all right. It shaped a lot of Infinite Frontier once I cracked it. Once I figured that out, I was like, oh, okay, now I know where I'm going with this. So yeah.
Okay, man, I'm very excited.
Thanks, dude.
DC, all the stuff you're doing with DC. Is there anything else? I mean, you're busy, but is there?
Yeah, dude. I mean, Nailbiter is over. So Nailbiter Returns is over. 10 just came out. We have plans for that book, but it's gonna take a while. Like Mike has other things he wants to work on. I'm obviously really busy. Right. Birthright is ending. The last year Birthright will come out in June. What else, dude? Yeah, I mean, creator owned. I have like a stack of creator owned books I'm working on.
I know. I've asked you this like 3 times. I keep hoping you're gonna give me something.
Dude, I know, it's crazy. I have so many. I actually in 2 weeks my schedule opens up for a week, and all I'm doing in that week is just working on my outlines for creator owned. Part of it is because I like planning things out, you know. And I think for the last few years I've worked on a lot of stuff that is like really long form, you know. So I worked on Flash for 100 issues, right? It's like, you know, I worked on stuff for long periods of time. Nailbiter now total, I have 40 issues of Nailbiter total. 41 if you count the special with Hackslash, right? It's like, and then I'll have 50 issues of Birthright, and so it's like I'm really interested in doing stuff that's like 12 issues long, and so or 18 at the most.
Okay.
We're wrestling with formats, like having some graphic novels in there and things like that. And so, but to do that, I really want to make sure that I have a really solid outline and plan for each one, because like when you're doing something that's really long, you can kind of fudge things a little. You can kind of like with Birthright, it was like, okay, I know issue 5 is this, issue 10 is this, issue 15 is this, issue 20 is this, 25 is this. 25 through 35 got a little muddy in terms of what I knew. It was like I knew certain bits and pieces, but it kind of shifted around a little bit because the story changes, but I did that on purpose in case the story did change. But I always knew what 40 was. I always knew what 41 was. Once you get to the deeper numbers, like I knew what every issue was pretty much. Once we got to 41 through 50, 40 through 50, I always knew what every issue was going to be. But it's that thing of like doing all this stuff that's so big all the time. I'm super interested in shorter, but I still want to know what I'm doing. I want to make sure when it's shorter, you can't fudge.
Right.
Like you don't have this situation where you're writing it and then you're like, fuck, dude, I ran out of room. Because that happens. I remember when Ed Brubaker was working on Kill or Be Killed, which I have right here in the shelf. That was supposed to be, I think he talks about it. It was supposed to be 12 issues. And it's like super, I think it's like 18 or 20. He talked about
it's 20 issues.
Yeah. He thought it was only going to be whatever, 10 or 12. And then he just was like, I'm running out of room, so I'm just going to keep going.
I think it even could have gone longer.
Yeah.
When I found out it was ending, I'm like, what the fuck? I wasn't expecting it to end because it didn't.
Yeah.
It was ending, but.
Yeah, I love this book. Let me see.
It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's a good one. I actually read it all in one sitting this last summer. I really like it a lot. Ed Brubaker is probably, I don't want to say he's my favorite, but he's definitely in the top 5. He's the person I probably own everything.
I have everything, yeah. I got some like really obscure book he wrote. His first book that he wrote that came out. It came out the month and year I was born.
Oh, crazy! I gotta find that. What is it?
It's called Pajama.
What?
Fucking something. Yeah, I don't know. I was on mycomicshop.com and I searched February '87 because I wanted to see what books
came out. Yeah.
And like Wonder Woman #1 by George Perez came out.
Yeah.
Dope. And then I saw like this random book because I was even looking at the indie books. I was like, Ed Brubaker's first comic. I was like, what the fuck? Like,
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
He's funny. I actually met him through different channels and stuff. But he's one of those creators that like always makes me a little anxious. And I've like hung out with that dude. Like the very first time I ever watched The Office, this is gonna sound really crazy. The very first time I ever watched The Office was on a beanbag chair in Ed Brubaker's basement. And I'd never watched the show before. And it was the season finale of like season 1 or season 2. And it was the episode where like Jim and Pam kissed for the first time. It was the first episode I ever saw, was in his basement on a projector TV on a beanbag chair with like a ton of other creators and like other people who worked in comics and just eating pizza in his basement, watching The Office. So it's like, I know him, but
yeah, that's awesome.
It still makes me super nervous sometimes when I run into him at a con and stuff. Like, like Ghosted was a book that I think was like super influenced by him. But yeah, dude, he's awesome. He's one of my favorites. I feel like he has no misses.
Yeah,
I get frustrated when I read his stuff, dude, because like I haven't read Reckless yet. I have Reckless over here.
It's so good.
It's so yeah, dude. So I haven't read it. I know everyone says it's good. I'm nervous. This is why, because I remember writing Pulp when Pulp came out. Like Image just said, like Image knows I love Brubaker, so when a new Brubaker thing comes out, they just mail it to me. So I'll get it like a little early. And so I'm sitting there reading Pulp in my backyard. I had like built this really nice gazebo. It was like a really nice day, and I'm just like chilling, reading it. And those books, like every like 10 pages, I'd like put it down and be like, "Fuck."
Yeah, I know.
And I gotta get to work. Like every time I read Brubaker, he definitely makes me feel like, man, I gotta go work. I gotta go work on that outline. I gotta go figure out the story. I gotta like, his stuff breathes so well. Like it's like, I don't know, man, it's flawed. And it's not just, and I shouldn't say it's Brubaker. Obviously, Sean Phillips plays like a crazy part of it. It's like he has it down pat. Like they obviously know each other really well.
Oh yeah, the two of them are amazing.
Phillips. Yeah, so that's it. Like whenever I read a book by both of them, I'm like, so that's why I'm nervous about Reckless, because I feel like it's just gonna shame me. Like I'm gonna sit there and read it and be like, oh, this is so good. You start just crying in the middle of it. Be like, oh, it's so good. oh my god, I gotta figure this out. Like
Yeah.
it makes me be like, oh man, I gotta be a better writer. Like every time he's the one that nails me every time. Like a lot of the writers, I'm like, oh, like sometimes I look at like Chip Zdarsky and the stuff that Chip does. I think Chip's a really like great writer. I think right now he's one of my favorites. Like, but he's also it's the same thing. Like I'll read Chip stuff and I'm like, oh man, this guy's so good. And it inspires me. You know, I read I'm actually behind on his Daredevil because of that. Because I'm like, oh, I know that book's good. I can sit there for a minute. But you know, he's doing a story for DC. He's doing the Red Hood story that's going to be in Urban Legends, which is it's really good.
Yeah, I have it. I brought it home from work. I just haven't had a chance to read it.
Oh, cool. Yeah, he does good stuff. I really like him a lot. Yeah, Brubaker's great, man. He's real good. Anyway.
You're gonna absolutely love Reckless. I mean, I often like I don't even read solicits for their books. I just buy them.
Yeah, dude.
I like it.
Yeah.
I don't think I need to know what the book's about. I take it home and then it's like, oh, they're like, what's your favorite? I'm like, it's always whatever I last read by them. That's my
favorite. I Pulp was really good. I really like Bad Weekend.
Yeah.
I actually have never read Velvet.
Oh, you should.
Which is not Phillips. I know I have it right here. I never read Velvet. Criminal's really good. I really like Fade Out. I had one thing on Fade Out that drove me crazy was I wish that when it ended they faded out and they didn't. What else is here? I have Sleeper. Oh, Fatale was really good. I really like Fatale. I have Incognito in the living room. I was reading it like 2 years ago and I just hasn't made it back to my office.
I love that book.
Yeah, it's really good. Cruel Summer was real good, which that's just Criminal. But yeah, I mean, I got them all here. I mean, Criminal is great. It's really, really great. But yeah, I got Reckless over here. I'm gonna get to it. I don't know. I have like so many comics to read. I have like stacks.
I know. I'm the same. Ever since I started working at the shop and I get the discount, it makes it harder for me. Like you'd think I would save money, but instead I spend the same amount. I'm just getting more. So my to read pile just grows, and then I'm like, oh, I want to read that, and I buy that, and I haven't even read like the other 30 trades that are sitting.
Yeah, and then you're at work, and because I worked at a comic store all through high school and college, and so like I have many experience that you're talking about, having the discount, wanting to read stuff in the store. Taking something home to read it, bring it back, because just like I got to read this one thing, and then reading stuff at the counter when it's like super slow and you're caught up on what you got to do, like all that stuff, dude. I've definitely been there. It was funny. I was talking to I'll leave in this, but I was talking to an editor this last week. We were just talking about like DC covers and stuff, and we were talking about covers in the 90s and iconic covers and stuff. And I did a tweet yesterday. It was like, what's an iconic cover that you love from DC? It was funny. I said DC 3 times in a row just to make sure people understood I was talking about DC comics. Yeah. It took 18 minutes for somebody to send me a Marvel cover. I knew it was gonna happen, and I was joking with the editor. I was like, dude, I'm gonna tweet this right now. Let's see how long it takes. 8 minutes. But yeah, it's interesting. I was telling him this morning because we were going back and forth on what people's favorite covers were, and he was like, yeah, I looked at that thread and it was a lot of covers I'd never seen before, and I was like, oh, dude, I've seen them all. I was like, I worked at a comic book store in the 90s, like at the end of the 90s when I was a kid. Basically my first job working at a comic book store, I was 14, and so I started working there, and I was like, if it's something from the 90s, I've probably seen it.
If you could just like really quick, I mean, I know I did it last time, but I'd like you to share where everybody can find you online, and then I'll drop the link below.
Yeah, just Williamson_Josh on Twitter is the best place to get me. I have an Instagram, but I never really use it. But Williamson_Josh place to get me and to see what's coming with stuff I'm working on. And I always post teasers and stuff on there. Yeah.
All right, cool, man. Well, again, thank you for chatting with me. I always love talking to you, and you can bet I'm gonna hit you up when some of these announcements.
Dude, you'll see, dude. You'll see. Yeah. You're probably gonna email me in like. I'm gonna say you're probably gonna email me in. Hold on, look at the calendar. Hold on. You're probably gonna have questions. Let's see here, 1, 2, probably like 3 weeks.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, if you can fit me into the schedule, then I'll probably want to.
No, you're gonna want to email me though. But we'll probably wait until I think Infinite Frontier 1 comes out.
Okay, fine. Let's do that. Let's do that. But I will email you probably when.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
All right. Cool, man. All right. Thank you again, and have a good one.
You too.